Welcome to today's meeting of the Housing Committee. Members of the public may like to follow at London Assembly on social media and use the hashtag London Housing for this meeting. Please may I remind participants to silence your devices. Our main item of business this afternoon is a discussion on leasehold and service charges. Before we begin, we have a few short items of business. Can I now ask our clerk, Diane Richards, if any apologies have been received?
Thank you, Chair. Apologies have been received from Assemblymember Cooper, for whom Assemblymember Baker will be substituting today.
Thank you very much, Diane. Can I ask the committee to note the recommendations set out at item 2 and ask if members have any other interest to declare? Okay. Can we confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 21st of January 2025? Yes? Okay. Can we note the completed and outstanding actions arising from previous meetings? Great. So that brings us to our main item of business today, leasehold and service. Sorry?
Would there be a need to declare if you're a leaseholder?
No, I wouldn't have thought so.
Okay.
We know that you live in London, and I imagine most people are, so. Okay. Our main item of business today, leasehold and service charges. Can I please welcome our panel of guests? Kate Webb, Head of Housing Strategy at the Greater London Authority. Tom Copley, Deputy Mayor for Housing and Residential Development, also at the Greater London Authority. Fiona Fletcher-Smith, CEO of L&Q and Chair of the G15. Charmaine McQueen-Prince, Chair of the Leasehold Reform Subcommittee, Residential Freehold Association, and Andrew Bulmer, who's CEO of the Property Institute. So welcome to you all. We have a number of questions for you today, and we'll be targeting them at different people. If you would like to comment, then please do feel free to indicate to the Assembly member that's asking that question. So let's start. I'll kick off. And the first question is to all of you, so I'll start with Andrew and then work across. From your organisation's perspective, then, what are the positives of the Leasehold and Freehold Reform Act, and what are its limitations? We'll start with you, Andrew.
Thank you. It is a curate's egg, to say the least, and not all of it is relevant so far as we are concerned. If you take them in provisions in order, the removal of the leasehold houses, except for those exceptions, is a very sensible thing to do. There's no reason to have a leasehold house. The enfranchisement piece is not a property manager's concern. We don't get involved on the ground rents. We may collect them for and on behalf of a freeholder or a resident RMC. But the positioning around enfranchisement clauses, rates and so forth is not a concern of property management. If I were to illustrate it by saying that property management is window cleaning, cleaning and emptying the bins, you get the point that that is tenure blind and it is ground rent blind. So that is of no great interest to us. The safe from making sure that whatever tenure that there is does actually work. RTM extensions, it's an extension of that which is existing. It comes with some variations around percentages on commercial, the amount of commercial property which is involved, but it's an extension of existing issues and complications that already exist, and it's a move towards greater democratisation of control of estates by the leaseholders. So we're sanguine about that. The regulation of leasehold, so provisions, for example, for greater transparency around service charge accounts, that is something that we campaigned for. We were the ones that were stressing the benefits of having a standard chart of accounts, which would make it easier for leaseholders to compare and understand from one estate to another. So we were pleased to see that our request was listened to on that one. The accounts and annual reports is providing more information. That's fine. It will create additional work. That will create additional burden on the business, and therefore that will ultimately come down to the fees that managing agents charge. But in principle, that's fine. But I think hopefully this conversation will move more to how we can improve leaseholders' understanding of the information that they're given, because it's not the quantity of the information or the frequency, it's the transparency of it and its ability to be understood. and I'd welcome a discussion around that. Proposal around insurance fees, fine. There will have been some managing agents that will have been taking excessive commissions. They shouldn't have. It's been banned for years under the service charge codes and under the Property Institute standard. So we're really comfortable with that. What it will do is require a transition period just in terms of changing the business model to charging proportionate fees, and we welcome the guidance from the regulations on that from CLG in due course. In terms of litigation costs, that is a bit of a mess, to be honest with you. I completely understand the need to rebalance the power between leaseholders and freeholders in terms of where sometimes there has been some arguments made for those costs to be abused. But the way that it has been set up at the moment means that RMCs that are not-for-profits will have no means or funding for their debt recovery programmes. So that's problematic, and we await Mr Pennycook's advice on which bits of the Act he has himself said are flawed and require further thought, and perhaps that might be one of them. We will see. So,
we're going to come back, so I'm
yep.
there's an opportunity to get through the panel and there's some follow-ups.
Sure.
Sorry, otherwise there's feedback. Charmaine.
Good afternoon, panel members. LAFRA. We would say that the positives of LAFRA, the legislation claims to give greater transparency to leaseholders, greater rights, greater protections. Well, great, that's exactly what we want leaseholders to have. We have no issue with that. What our concerns are in relation to LAFRA is that this legislation has been rushed through, or it was rushed through Parliament. The Housing Minister has already pointed out that there are serious flaws with this legislation. We're also waiting on the secondary legislation, so we're not in a position to fully analyse this legislation. Some of the provisions are subject to a judicial review. Some of the concerns in relation to the provisions of LAFRA are the calculation of lease extensions and collective enfranchisement. And I think the massive issue in relation to that is the changes that LAFRA are proposing. And what we think is that those changes will only benefit wealthy buy-to-let landlords, some of whom are living outside of the UK, and that this particular measure does not do what the government wants it to do, and that is to benefit private owning leaseholders. This particular measure will not do that because it's untargeted. One of the other issues that we have with LAFRA is, as Andrew says, the problems with the legal costs and what the provisions are proposing. Landlords need to fund litigation. Without being able to fund litigation, we're not going to be able to recover service charge that hasn't been paid. We're not going to be able to deal with some of the most egregious things that happen in leasehold buildings, such as antisocial behaviour. We're not going to be able to recover where there are serial non-payers of service charge, so you will have a massive hole in the service charge because there are people who are not paying. So we won't be able to do that. 50% of the litigation that some of our members are currently overseeing or undertaking is because we've been asked to undertake them by right-to-manage companies or by RMCs to actually recover service charge. We are being asked, the landlord is being asked to do that by these companies that are managing buildings because they are unable to recover the service charges themselves. And if we're not able to recover our legal costs, then landlords might not be disposed to offer themselves in that way because they can't recover their legal costs. So those are some of the issues that we have with LAFRA. Also, in terms of considering legal costs, there is already provisions in place. So, for example, Section 20C of the Landlord and Tenant Act, if a leaseholder makes that application, then a judge will consider whether legal costs can be recovered from service charges or not. So it's just not a blanket, landlords will get this legal cost paid. There is an application that can be made, and that can be considered by a judge. There's also FTT rules, procedural rules, that will consider whether legal costs and other costs are payable. And also it's the same in county court. So it's just not a blanket landlords get their legal costs. The issue that we really have to think about today is if landlords are not able to get their legal costs, this will have an impact on buildings. It will have an impact on the way buildings are managed. It will have an impact on the way people live in buildings, and it will have an impact on people's homes.
Okay, thank you very much. Fiona.
Thank you, Chair. I think quite a bit has been covered already, but just to stress, as social housing landlords, we are very keen on that transparency and uniformity, because it's really important for me that leaseholders are able to see the detail but also compare service charges across different developments. We also really welcome the inclusion of freeholders who have to pay an estate charge as part of this, and giving them access to first-tier tribunals is also really positive. In common with both Charmaine and Andrew, though, we are worried about the detail of some of this. So where transparency and uniformity is superb, it's how do we access that information and provide it available to residents. And we are working very closely with MHCLG on making sure that that can be available digitally. And recognising that as many landlords, we've quite a bit of data cleansing and sorting out, which we will come back to a number of times today, I'd imagine. We've a lot of work to do to get ready for this reform. But in general, we welcome it, and we're also very keen on the transparency around insurance commission that's being charged by superior landlords and their agents, where in a lot of cases housing associations aren't the owner or freeholder or even head lessee. Thank you.
Thank you. And then finally, Tom and Kate.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good to be with you today. I think overall we felt the Act was a missed opportunity and a disappointment, particularly because it did not take up the opportunity to make common hold the default tenure for flats. However, there are aspects of it that we welcome and aspects of it that the Mayor called for. So things like making it cheaper and easier for leaseholders to extend their lease or buy their freehold, removing the requirement to pay marriage value, increasing the standard lease term to 900 lease renewal term to 990 years. I should say we slightly pipped the government to the post on this when we introduced this as standard for shared ownership leases in our affordable homes programme. The ban on granting of new leasehold houses in most cases, although given that 95% of homes sold in London are flats, that's not such an issue here. And of course the stuff that we've heard around improving transparency, particularly of service charges, all of those things are to be welcomed. But given, as I say, that most of the properties sold in London are flats, given that 36% of properties in London are owned leasehold compared to 19% in the rest of the country, there's still a lot more to do, and I really welcome what the new government is proposing to take these reforms further and finish what the previous government should have done.
Thank you very much. Just very quickly. Sorry. So my next question, I'll start with Tom and work the other way. Noting that common hold doesn't apply in quite the same way to shared owners who are nevertheless leaseholders, what would you want to see in a common hold white paper? And if you could explain the benefits and disbenefits of that, and then we'll work across, and feel free to share any views that you have.
Sure. So I think there are a few things that were missed. I mean, the big one, again, being the default tenure for flats, and this is something that the Housing Minister, Matt Pennycook, has said that they would address. There's also, and this again is quite key for London, how do you address mixed-use developments? This is going to be really, really key. That wasn't addressed in the 2024 Act. I hope and I believe it will be addressed in the forthcoming Act. The Law Commission, as one of its recommendations, also identified one of the key barriers to common hold is lender reluctance, so it's difficult for people to get mortgages. There wasn't anything in the 2024 Act to sort of address that or give reassurance to lenders about common hold as something they would wish to lend against. Specifically on shared ownership, there has to be a solution for shared ownership. My recollection is that the Law Commission did recommend the retention of a form of leasehold for shared ownership, but that the shared owner in that instance would be the member of the Common Hold Association, and when, or if, I should say, the shared owner staircased to 100%, then they would then get the transfer of the share of the freehold of the property. So I think there's a few things there that we would like to see in the forthcoming legislation.
I think Tom's description of it alone shows the complexity that a housing association might face. Shared ownership is a massive... we've built lots of shared ownership homes over the years, and it's really quite tough for shared owners already, and I think this might add a layer of complexity to it, so they need to find an answer for common hold. We are keen to explore in blocks where we build purely for sale to see what the options are around there. But we, as housing associations, we tend to build mixed use, multi-tenure, and I fear that the proposals as stand may just make that even more complicated to manage and explain to people, which is not where we want to be, I'm sure.
Just to pick up a point I think that Tom made in terms of common hold, I think in order to widen the availability of common hold for shared ownership, I think that something called a permissible residential lease will be required. So the point that I think I'm making is you're not going to get away from leasehold. You still need a lease in order to ensure that common hold is widely available to people. So that's the first point. The second point I'd like to make is the RFA is all about choice. Why does common hold have to be the default tenure? Why can't common hold and leasehold live together side by side? Why does it have to be one or the other? Thirdly, we've seen already through the previous government surveys that some leaseholders are quite happy being leaseholders. Some leaseholders do not want this transition to common hold. So why is it that we're not taking into account what those leaseholders want? The fact of the matter is that they bought a leasehold. You know, they've got a mortgage based on a leasehold. Why should they be forced to transfer if that's not what they want to do? The other question is what are the lenders saying about transferring? There are significant problems with common hold, and I can speak to them now and give you examples of those common hold problems. There are significant problems with common hold, and they're widely known. Those haven't been addressed as far as I know. I can give examples of them. There's the Common Hold Association, the risk of it being struck off, the risk of insolvency. There's the common hold's ability to actually run a building. Property management isn't easy. If we're talking about building safety and ensuring that people are safe in their homes, then property management is not about doing it at the weekend. It's not about doing it after, you know, a full day's work. It's not about doing it in your retirement. It's 24/7. It's a tough gig. And if people think that they can just pick this up, they're going to be sadly mistaken. And in fact, I can give many examples where just before Christmas, we had a block that was right to manage, and they had a named manager in their lease. And they handed in the keys. They said they no longer want to manage. They actually resigned from Companies House. Now, this particular building had an enforcement notice on it. It had problems with the external wall. It also had compartmentation problems. There was no FRA. There was no fire risk assessment for, I think, 2 years. There was no FRAEW. There was no compartmentation survey. And when we did see the reports that were being undertaken by the RTM and their appointed manager, it was not by people that were competent to carry out these reports. Okay? We also got to realise that profiles in buildings, people change. You may have in year 1, 2 and 3 people who are really eager to manage their building. And then in years 4, 5, these people have moved on, they've burned out, they no longer want to do it. If you have common hold, you don't have that landlord to step in. You don't have those provisions for a landlord to step in. And that's exactly what some of our members are having to do when people no longer want to manage their buildings. So we have to be very careful what we wish for when we talk about abolishing leasehold. There was a... Yeah? Okay. As for the Law Commission's recommendations, there are a few concerns around that. So, for example, granting floating charges over future income. What future income? I'm assuming that the income that's demanded is going to be for the repair and maintenance of the building. So what future income can you grant a fixed charge over? There's also floating charge over. There's also talk of fixed charges over common parts. Why would you have a fixed charge over a common part? That doesn't actually make sense to me. What are you going to do? Put a fixed charge over a hallway, or I don't know, a corridor? Another example of what's being suggested by the Law Commission is a sale-off of common parts. One, that's probably going to reduce the value of your property, and you can only sell something off once. So if you are living in a building where you are the freeholder and then you have to keep selling things off because you're not managing it properly or you're not getting your costs in properly, how long is it going to take until you've got nothing more to sell?
If it's okay, I'm just mindful of the time, and I will come back. We have more about the challenges facing leaseholders and so on, but if I could bring in Assembly Member Boff, and then the Deputy Mayor wanted to come in, and then we'll continue, and then come back.
Ms McQueen-Prince, you referred to earlier the difficulty that you had in covering your legal costs. So what is your view of the consultation on permitted insurance fees that's actually just finished, I think?
Some freeholders take a share of brokers' commission for insurance work. Some freeholders do that. But insurance work is recognised as valuable work by the FCA, by MHCLG, and also by the FTT. And you can see that by the FTT determinations. As far as the RFA are concerned, permitted insurance fees, they don't think that it's necessary because they think that the FCA rules are adequate. The FCA rules, I think they were updated in December 2023, and what those rules do is say that insurance companies must act in the best interest of leaseholders, number one. Number two, insurance work must adhere to the fair value principles. So the insurance work must be, the remuneration must be disclosed, it must be proportionate, and it must be transparent. And as far as the RFA are concerned, that's all you need. We don't need any further regulation. As long as people are adhering to the FCA rules, then that's all that's required. Our fear is if we move away from those rules, then it could be more expensive for leaseholders. So if you have a commission, all of your work is wrapped up in that commission. So the daily work that you do in that commission, the work that you do in relation to building safety, or providing information to the insurers on building safety, providing information to insurers where you're remediating because the building has a problem with the external wall, or the information that you might provide to them for, whatever else the insurer needs. It was all wrapped up in that commission. If you now have permitted fees, that would mean that you're invoicing for every legitimate insurance work that you do, which could actually end up costing more. If you have a major incident, I know that members, where there's been a fire at a block, are still talking to loss adjusters 6 months down the line. That would all be wrapped up within that initial insurance commission. But under this new provision, they could be invoicing it.
To what extent will leaseholders, or do leaseholders, have control over those costs of insurance?
Are you talking about the
permitted
insurance premium or the...
Yeah, but to what extent do they have a control over the insurance arrangements?
Well, that will be via the broker. So whoever is required to arrange the insurance will probably do it through a
But
broker.
the leaseholders themselves wouldn't have any control over those costs.
No, because that wouldn't be their provision in the lease. Whoever is required to place the insurance will have the control, but that insurance would usually be tendered, and so you're going to go for the best policy, and that's the whole point of involving a broker.
You gave us some anecdotes about how awful Commonhold was, and everything you listed can happen under a leasehold property, and the difference being is that under Commonhold, the leaseholders or the residents at least control their own destiny. They can make those decisions for themselves. Under leasehold, they can make no decisions. Isn't that correct?
I'm sorry if I gave a really difficult or impression of Commonhold. I don't have, I'm not against Commonhold. What I will say about Commonhold is it is not where it needs to be. There is a lot more work that needs to be done, and we haven't seen that work yet, so we can't analyse it. So that's my concern about Commonhold. I already said that I think that Commonhold and leasehold should be able to live quite nicely together. And in terms of people wanting control, then that's fine. They can have that under Commonhold, but they need to understand the work that goes behind it. So in terms of stewardship, which is what you would have with leaseholds, what landlords do behind the scenes. So, for example, if working for an RMC, if they can't get insurance because trying to get individual insurance for a building can be very difficult, a landlord will step in, a landlord will help. In terms of getting your service charge recovered because RTMs or RMCs are not able to do that alone, a landlord will step in, a landlord will help. In terms of where RMCs...
Forgive me, but a landlord could help. That
And landlords do help.
Doesn't necessarily mean they will help.
Well, I am speaking for the RFA, and we have, I think, a number of members who are really quite large landlords. In fact, they are responsible for 1 million leasehold properties, which is what I think 1/5 of the leasehold market. And I can tell you that a number of these landlords do step in when they're asked to step in. They are able to, their size, their expertise, these are all the things that you're getting with landlords.
Thank you very much, Charmaine. If I could just ask you, Andrew, put the same question to you and then come back to the Deputy Mayor about your views on Commonhold White Paper.
Sure. So the first thing to say is that as a property manager, cleaning, window cleaning and gardening occurs irrespective of tenure. So in a sense we are relatively relaxed. The reality is that there are problems with leasehold. There are also problems with Commonhold. It is, and you swap one set of problems for another, and we can see already. We can see the problems with leasehold. We can have a fair view of some of the problems with Commonhold. If you look at freehold owning RMCs, so it's to an extent we're agnostic. Frankly, it's just as long as the tenure works and rumbles along and our members can operate those buildings, we're sanguine about it. There are complexities over mixed use. That applies in a leasehold structure where you have an RMC as well. But there are complexities over mixed use, and that really does need careful thinking about.
Can I just quickly ask you, on the point about mixed use, you said it in your introduction as well, is there a percentage of or proportion of kind of commercial to residential where there is a tipping point? Am I misunderstanding?
No, you're not misunderstanding, but whenever you have mixed use on a site, whether it's 25% or 50%, and it's recently been varied, you still have complications. It's just the extent of complication varies, that's all. But it is the inevitable conflict of different uses within the same structure and using common services, for example. It is what it is. We would like to see in a white paper, because that was the question, a few things. I think one of the key things is that we would like to see regulation of property agents. Mr Pennycook has promised already for mandatory qualifications, and we're very pleased to see that. Because the idea that somebody managing a big scary building and having no competence to do so is clearly dangerous. So that is, but that's, I don't think that even reaches minimum viable product. If you have a property agent that has a qualification, I qualified 36 years ago, am I any good anymore? One might like to think that somebody asked me a couple of questions sometimes and monitored my ongoing development. If you have a monitoring process and you also have the ability to pull my ticket to stop me if I'm not good enough, then that means you have a regulator. So let's accept that we need a regulator, and if that's a regulator for those individuals, while you're at it, you regulate the firms. By regulating the firms, you make sure that the individual cannot be forced, compelled into doing something that they should not be doing. An individual will only have so much agency and control over the activities of the firm. So let us bring forward both mandatory competence standards and regulation of managing agents. And this is important because, and we can already see this with RMCs, and also we see this in Scotland, where there is no leasehold. We provide qualifications for property factors, they're called in Scotland. That there is an issue around competence with leaseholders running their own buildings. Now here I need to be really clear that I'm in no way denigrating the intelligence or abilities of leaseholders. I regularly quote the lead violinist of the London Philharmonic Orchestra, a brilliant individual, probably knows very little about running a building. If we consider then the Building Safety Bill, that proposed a building safety manager as a statutory role. It was dropped, but that role was talking about a level 6 qualification for somebody to manage the safety of a building. Whether an RMC or whether a common hold, that association will be the principal accountable person under the Building Safety Act. And they are now responsible in law already for demonstrating competence in the safe management of their building to PAS 8673. My point is this. If it requires a level 6 qualification to manage the safety of the building, and it is now building managers in the absence of a BSM that's doing that work, again, that competence standard surely is required. It is unlikely that a resident will have that competence to do it, however intelligent and clever and brilliant they may be. If that resident does not have that degree of technical competence, then they are not an informed consumer. And if you do not have an informed consumer, then you have a vulnerable consumer. And so therefore, when they are doing their beauty parade of whoever it is that they want to manage their building, you need to take away the risk so that then they can focus on perceptions of service, charges and so on and so forth. But at the very least, that operator needs to be safe. And at the moment, there's no means of measuring that and making sure that that's the case. So my big plea would be for regulation as well as mandatory competence standards. I'm really sorry, I'm losing my voice. I went on holiday for 2 weeks and I've come back to solid meetings the whole time, and I'm starting to
I was going to, just very quickly, oh, your mic has gone.
It has. When you turn yours on, I think it knocks.
I was just going to say I'm a little bit mindful of time. Apologies for cutting you off for the second time. But the Deputy Mayor did want to come in. If you've wrapped up, or is it something?
If I may, sorry, I'll turn my microphone back on. The other thing is that changing tenure is massive, whether it's for lenders, lawyers, conveyancers and the homeowners themselves. So there needs to be provision for significant education, support and a transition period, because this is not a transition to be underestimated. It is very substantial. And when it considered, it is the greatest asset class of our country is residential property. Mess with it at your peril and make sure you get it right and take the time to get it right.
Thank you, Andrew. Tom.
Just a broad point, following on from what Ms McQueen-Prince was saying. I mean, it's worth noting that England and Wales is the only country in the world that has this leaseholder freeholder system. Every other country in the world has some form of common ownership. I mean, I think in the United States they call it condominiums. You know, Scotland has a different system. of course it's important that we get common hold right. We absolutely need to. But I'm absolutely confident that we can, because every other country has a form of this, pretty much. And I don't see other countries clamouring to switch to our system. In fact, it's the other way around. I think a few decades ago, Australia switched from a leasehold freehold system to some sort of common hold system. So I have no doubt that it is absolutely going to be complex. And as we've just heard, it has to be done, carefully, but it can be done.
Thank you. Assembly Member Lord Bailey.
Chair, I think the Deputy Mayor has largely answered my direct question, so I just want to quickly follow on from the points that were made. Charmaine, surely you talked about the difficulties of residents running a building. I used to chair my resident association. I fully understand that. But as the Deputy Mayor said, it happens everywhere else in the world. Why can't a property manager, why couldn't the law require the common hold owners to seek a professional to run that? Why couldn't that be part of it?
They can. I think if you've got a common hold situation or common hold building, the Common Hold Association can appoint, I assume, directors, professional directors, to help run the common hold. But I think the point that I'd like to make is, with leasehold, you have many, many years of freeholders managing and running buildings. You have freeholders that have massive teams of lawyers, building safety professionals, surveyors, senior property managers within their ranks that are able to offer advice, and so, as I said before, are able to step in to help. Even RMCs, so where they're not even carrying out the repair and maintenance obligations, landlords step in to help RMCs, they step in to help right-to-manage companies. You've got their size, you've got their contacts, you've got all of these things that freeholders have, that if you go and appoint a director, they're not coming with that support.
I fully accept what you're saying, but it sounds like to me it's a new business class. If I had that resource and the law changed, I would just set up a business to do that work. That's what it sounds like to me.
You can do that, but common hold is going to cost. And if leaseholders are saying the whole point of common hold is to reduce costs and have control, well, they're going to have control, but they're going to have more costs. And I think that is what people need to understand. And just back to Tom's point about, leasehold not being anywhere in the rest of the world, well, that's just not the case. Leasehold can be found in other parts of the world. Another point that I wanted to make,
such as
Europe, I think the Middle East, I think Bangkok. There are other places in the world that have leasehold.
We'll test that because it's common. Yeah. Tom's response, the Deputy Mayor's response, is the response that's often given. So we'll go back and test that. It's interesting to hear your point.
Happy for you to do that.
Thank you. I just want to move on to Andrew, because I have great sympathy for what you're saying, Andrew. You excuse my candor and tell me to behave myself if I need to, but your responses are very practical. You're like, how are we going to get this done? And I am very much in favour of a regulator. I just think it's such a sensible thing. I don't know why it doesn't exist. But my first question, who pays?
There is a narrative at the moment against regulation as being seen as anti-growth. And I don't think any of us would want to get onto an aeroplane or go to a dentist that wasn't regulated. There is a place for proportionate regulation when it reduces risk and reduces failure rates in any sector. I say that just across the piece. Our members already pay a membership fee to be for the firms to be audited, and our individuals already pay for qualifications to get qualified. Our membership for individuals has gone up from 3,000 to 6,500 over the last 7 years, indicating a flight to quality, a recognition of the need to upskill. So I think that there is a good chunk of industry that is already, and a lot of the leading players are doing this now, they're already paying. I don't think that regulation needs to be so complex or arranged in such a way that it is hugely expensive.
Can
It
I just
should be
intervene?
self-funded.
Can I just make a challenge to you? They already pay. What would compel them to pay more? Because this would be additional, surely. And again, I have real sympathy, but it sounds like a big cost.
It would be, sorry to interrupt, it would be, but the business would pay for it. But the margins on business, I will tell you now, in block management are very slight. If I were to be candid, I would say that is probably one of the incentives historically for the industry looking for additional sources of income. So it would filter through ultimately to the customer, but the cost per head is going to be minimal. It really would be minimal. It would be pence per leaseholder per annum.
Thank you. That's interesting because I think that's one of the arguments that's going to be need to be made to get a regulator. I'm going to quickly come back to Charmaine as well. You talked about common home and you seemed ambivalent. You know, it could go one way. You think these two things could exist together, but we need to do work on common hold. Again, that's clearly obvious to me. What pieces of work would you like to see done to make common hold relevant, possible, etc., etc.?
I think the required pieces of work are already out there. You know, the Law Commission have already made its recommendations, and so those need to be reviewed. Some of them I already spoke to earlier, where I think there are question marks over those. But what I really think is we need to be able to look at something, look at a proposal, and see if it works. That's what we really need to do. But as I said before, I think that common hold and leasehold can work side by side. I think it's important that people have a choice. It's all about choice. And I also think that given what we have seen, where people are saying they no longer want to manage, I think we need to have that alternative. I think people need to be able to say, actually, I don't want common hold. I'd rather have a landlord. I'd rather have somebody who's a bit more qualified than me, who's got all of this resource that can manage my building. All I want to do is come home and put my feet up. I'm not interested in, you know, that there's a problem with the roof. I'm not interested that there's a problem with the service conduits. Some people just want that, and I think we've got to make that available.
I happen to agree. I think it's a compelling argument to have both. I don't think both can work without a regulator. My question to you, Andrew, would be around a timeline. Even if we went forward with what's proposed now, forget the conversations the new government's having, I don't think the new government has enough of an idea that they're going to need a transition. If you had to pull a time out of the air, what would you think would be a transition to move, just to instigate the legislation, the new legislation as we're talking about it?
Can I define the question?
Yes.
If it's the timeline for the extinguishment of leasehold, that's one thing. If it's the timeline for the introduction of common hold as a value, as a working tenure, that's a different thing. The first question, the eradication of leasehold, I think will be never. Well, certainly not within many, many decades. Because if you have an estate that already has its own control, it has a peppercorn ground rent or £5 or something like that, then they have all of the control, especially if they own their own freehold. They've already got all their own control. They already can vary whatever they want. They can do whatever they want. And to go through the legal process of changing will bring them effectively no benefits for the cost of doing so. So I think that there will be a rump of leaseholds that will remain. And especially when you get into the smaller leaseholds, if you consider the terraced house that's been split horizontally into three, and it's all kind of fine and it's all running along, people, I think, won't bother. So I think that there will be leaseholds. There will be a need for me to train managers to manage leasehold for forever, certainly for my several successors after me, I think. In terms of the introduction of common hold, I mean, normally it exists already. There are a few common hold estates, so in that sense it's already here. To bring it through at scale, you can get the legislation through relatively quickly, but I'll be surprised if it's meaningfully started to be delivered during this Parliament. It's you've got to bring along the lenders, the insurers, the conveyancers and so forth. And again, I come back to it. There is another point here, which is that this is culture change. to have residents genuinely feeling that they own and are part of a community, that they are responsible for, and the buck stops with them, is a culture change. And culture change takes time. And if you don't get that culture change, then you increase the failure rate of common holds. Because there will be some common holds that will fail. If you speak to the most ardent common hold advocate, and we know the organisations, they will tacitly agree that occasionally a common hold will fail. It's the nature of self-determination. It's the nature of democracy. It doesn't always work.
Okay, thank you.
So I think that it needs to be brought in thoughtfully, and it needs to be fully supported through programmes of education and awareness, as well as just being banged through in legislation. If you just bang it through in legislation, it's not going to end well.
Thank you. Fiona, you want to make a contribution?
Sure,
Sorry.
Thank you. Lord Bailey, I wanted to come back to your point on regulation. I share Andrew's view that we're fans of it. However, there are parts of the residential market that have become slightly incoherent in terms of the regulatory landscape. So if you take a housing association, for example, I'm regulated by the Regulator for Social Housing, the Building Safety Regulator, the Financial Conduct Authority, CQC, Care Quality Commission. There's also layers and layers of pseudo-regulation. For example, there's regulatory information coming from the various ombudsmen. And so it's slightly incoherent at the moment. So I think there is an opportunity to step back. Where it's becoming even more difficult at the moment is the Regulator for Social Housing. Through their monitoring of a housing association, they are also then seeking to tackle issues of managing agents. So, for example, for an organisation like L&Q, we have about 27,000 homes managed by managing agents, where in about 10,000 of those cases, I have absolutely no power or control over those managing agents, yet I will be graded and held accountable for their behaviour. And the only way I can possibly get them to do anything is go back through very odd arrangements with original developers. So it's all becoming slightly confused, and I think there is a need to take a step back and look at the whole picture and design something that really works effectively.
And when you say whole picture, do you mean for your part, for residential social landlords, or do you mean the entirety of that regulation?
Well, I think if you sort of layer in, my particular regulator started almost on their own, the Regulator for Social Housing, and then over the years various things have been added in that will affect social housing more than others. But for example, a managing agent and a freeholder will also have to report to the Building Safety Regulator on a number of issues. So we just need to make sure that they aren't in conflict, because the people who will suffer in the end in that confusion are leaseholders and tenants in the middle of it all, and freeholders who are trying to run a business when you're not quite sure which way to look and who's in charge. So the G15 have commissioned some work on this, which is not about asking for less regulation. We think the regulation is probably about right. It's just a bit more coherence in terms of who's in charge, what's the hierarchy, how do we get things done and protect people, which is the main aim of regulation.
I think, Chair, through you, when that piece of work is done, if possible, we'd like to see it, because although I'm very in favour of a regulator, I'm not in favour of regulations, but I do see in this arena, to my mind, none of this works without property agents being regulated. I think it's the answer to a problem, if you know what I mean, and it will give us a possible future as well.
But before I'm just very, very mindful of time. We are very, very behind.
About to stop, Chair. I've stopped.
I was going to ask Charmaine and Andrew if you want to briefly come in on this point before we move on to the next one. That would be fine, but very briefly.
Simply to chime with Fiona's advice that a coherent regulation across tenure would be desirable. So many developments in mixed tenure and mixed use, but certainly mixed tenure. The idea that you've got different people with different qualifications walking down the same corridor, qualified or regulated to manage the homes on the left-hand side of the corridor, but not those on the right, clearly becomes a nonsense. So I would chime for a coherent structure.
Okay, thank you. And then Charmaine, the last word.
I wanted to make 2 points, one about the regulation and one about going back to common hold. So in terms of the regulation, the RFA are 100% behind regulation. They support Lord Best's ROPA report 2019. We think that MAs should be members of a regulatory body that encourage or promote professionalism and high standards and are able to enforce against their members. We think that's really important. When they're not meeting the high standards, we think there should be a register of managing agents, so there's visibility. We know who to choose, we know what they're doing, we know how competent they are. We think that managing agents should have a mix of qualified and accredited employees, so that we know that there's a good standard of knowledge, and we also know that there's a good standard of technical experience. And we also think that maybe managing agents should be licensed. And we think that's important because, again, it's about choosing which agent will be appropriate for our portfolios. So if we have high-risk buildings or, 18-metre buildings, this managing agent can do that. They have the experience, they have the know-how, they have the employees that can do that. Or if we have low-rise, this is the managing agent to choose for the low-rise. So we think regulation is really important. But if I can just go back to the common hold point and the countries that have common hold. Well, we know Scotland abolished leasehold in the 2000s, and according to the Scottish Government's publication called Scottish House Condition Survey 2019, the key findings were that in 2019, disrepair to critical elements stood at 52% of all dwellings. Less than half, 19% of all dwellings, had instances of urgent disrepair to these critical elements. So when we're talking about common hold, we have to make sure that people are doing the jobs that they say that they can do. They're repairing their flats, they're repairing the communal areas. And the same kind of issue has arisen in Australia. The watchdog there, they are seeking powers to enter into apartments, buildings, and fine owner corporations because they are not repairing common areas. They are also trying to get into flats to see if flat owners are repairing. And what they're asking for is for flat owners to hand over documents, to consent to interviews, and to even seize documents. And if flat owners refuse, then they can be fined. These powers, they're looking at extending them across buildings in Australia. The issue is repair, and it's not necessarily happening. And the last point that I just want to make on this is a strata lawyer said she thought it was necessary, these rights were necessary, and the CEO of Peak Body Strata Community Organisation said the provisions would effectively address critical maintenance and repair issues, ensuring the safety and functionality of common property. This is common hold that everybody's talking about. In other countries, they have problems with repair.
Okay. If I could, thank you very much for that. If there is additional information that you would like to share with us about examples, then please do that. I would also be grateful if you could send the committee, you talked about costs that may increase or decrease. I think it was Charmaine and Andrew, but others as well. If you could send us those, that'd be really helpful for us to see that. And then I would like to move on to Assembly Member Garbett, please.
Hello all. Just to take us on to a different topic. So guests at our previous meeting and respondents to the survey told us that they believe that unreasonably high service charges to be widespread and profiteering. I just wanted to know if this is happening, and if yes, what you think we could do to prevent it. And I'd start with the Deputy Mayor. Thanks.
I certainly think that there have been countless examples in the media of ridiculously high service charges. So there's absolutely no doubt that there are cases, and probably too many cases, where this is happening. It's worth noting, of course, that freeholders, building owners, they're only allowed to charge for the services that are delivered. Leaseholders have the right to interrogate the service charges. And what the Mayor has called for is for leaseholders to be able to withhold unjustified service charges. That would be where the freeholder fails to provide essentially an account and an annual report, as they are required now to do by law. But as I understand it, under the current law, there is no kind of redress for leaseholders where that does not take place. It's a really difficult issue, though, and this is why I would talk about designing out service charges in the first place. I mean, I think that is really, really important at the building design stage, making sure that service charges can be kept down, not just to start with, but over the lifetime of the building. I think that's really, really important, and where developers are designing buildings, where local planning authorities perhaps are asking for particular things within buildings, to think about the impact that could have. They might be really nice to have, but the impact that could have, particularly as buildings get older, on the level of service charges. And designing out service charges is, a key part of the Mayor's Service Charges Charter, which I've no doubt that the committee has some questions on.
And do you think there's a specific role for the Mayor and the GLA in keeping an oversight in this area in terms of the properties that you're responsible for? I
think the specific role we have is in trying to drive best practice, which is the aim of the Service Charges Charter. We are not a regulator, though, and as much as sometimes we might like to be able to have a greater role, or we may indeed not like to have a greater role. Other organisations are responsible for that, and of course the government has the full oversight of the legislative framework with regards to service charges. What I think is really important is that leaseholders are empowered. They are empowered to challenge service charges where they are or appear to be unfair. I think that's really important. And coming back to the common hold issue, of course, we can't. Let's not pretend that common hold will sort of eliminate the issue of service charges. No, of course, there are always going to be service charges, but in a common hold environment, it's the actual residents of the building. They can shop around for the best deal when it comes to a managing agent, when it comes to repairs, when it comes to other things, and I would put forward that perhaps they have a greater vested interest in getting a better deal than a freeholder who isn't living in the building. So again, I think that's one of the advantages of a common hold system.
I know this is going to be a contentious issue on the panel. There's lots of head shaking while you were talking there, Deputy Mayor. Fiona, just to come to you on the question around, we've been hearing about these kind of high service charges, and if that's something you recognise and if you think can be prevented.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely recognise it, but it is not profiteering in any way. To just give you an insight into L&Q, I'm fresh from looking at next year's financial plan. It's that time of the year. We will run at a deficit of somewhere between 7 and 20 million on our service charge income. And it's normal to run at a loss. Now, I will admit to some of that is to do with internal systems and how we actually account for service charges properly, and we have an incredible amount of work to do on that. We go live in a couple of new IT systems this year, which will help, but there is absolutely no profiteering. Now, the other thing I'd say about this is the impact of inflation. Inflation has hit everybody. And if you're looking at newspaper or online headlines that tell you the rate of inflation is 2.5 to 3.5%, and you then get a bill that is way north of that, you're going to question why that is. But the Property Institute, that I'm sure we'll hear more about, have an index of costs. Their index on a cost of insurance has gone up, that insurance has gone up about 92%, utilities 73%. But looking at L&Q's own figures between 2019 and today, we've seen insurance in some cases go between 100 and 250% increase. We've seen repairs and maintenance run at 25 to 30% increase for all sorts of reasons, which are labour shortages, material shortages, the war in Ukraine and the impact on energy. And I don't think any of us have been, in my sector, have been good enough at explaining that to residents, that we are not profiteering, we are simply passing on the costs. Now, how we fix it is an excellent challenge. And I think Tom hit on it. We have to be very clear about the buildings that we design, and they have to be built to last in the long term. So design is really, really important. You've got to use materials that do not require maintenance, that have a full life cycle. So we're not asking leaseholders to pay for things. For example, one of the biggest problems we all have in high-rise, dense developments is water leaks. You can fit water detection equipment in a new build, but it's expensive up front. So looking at those sort of issues to make sure that we can make sure we're not charging people too much. And I would throw in another small problem that we're facing, which is quite a difficult one. We've got a couple of developments that I'm involved in London with superb green spaces. And coming out of the pandemic, if we learnt anything, it was if you're going to live in high-rise or dense accommodation, you need access to green, open space that is well managed and maintained to maintain your physical and mental health, if nothing else. But what we're finding is where we would have started a development, say 15 to 20 years ago, where there's an assumption that a local authority would be able to take over that park, we're now finding halfway through the development, for all sorts of reasons, local authorities simply don't have the money to be able to take over those parks. So we find ourselves having to charge service charges for the maintenance of what is in effect a public park to the leaseholders who live around it. And that's, I've got two examples at L&Q, but this is going to be an increasing problem. And in one case, it has led to us having to go back to the local authority on a one-bedroom shared ownership flat, where, now remember, you'll pay mortgage and you'll pay rent, where the service charge for that one-bedroom flat is £700 per month. So it's not affordable. It doesn't fit the income levels. There's nothing you can do, because originally that development was going to be a public park. So that's an increasing issue for us, and it's very, very hard to explain to residents, you are paying for what is in effect a public space.
Thank you. To the Deputy Mayor, you talked about designing out service charges. Does that mean that you'll consider the height of buildings where the service charges are so much higher than they are for lower rise?
I knew you were going to ask me that, Andrew.
Very good.
I knew.
So you were briefed. Yes.
Well, I think I just know you well enough by
yeah.
now. Yes. I think, and this touches on Fiona, the point that Fiona just made, I think it's about making sure that where there are tall buildings, and in order to achieve the densities we need to achieve in London, there are going to have to be more tall buildings, that they are built well in the first place, that corners are not cut, that costs are not scrimped on up front, because you will end up paying, well, the developer won't end up paying for that down the line, the residents will end up paying for that down the line. So maybe that means installing, not installing the cheapest lift, but installing a more expensive lift that's going to require less maintenance over the years. I'm just thinking in general, you know, how, what is there that needs to be maintained, you know, what there needs to be cleaned, and just having a real, you know, having a real upfront look at how you could, at the whole life of that building. And what it costs.
So taking into account lifetime costs, as Ms. Fletcher-Smith has just said,
making sure that
when you plan it and build it, take into account the lifetime costs.
Take into account reducing those lifetime costs for residents.
And just as an aside, I live on one of those estates with service charge, with one of the very green areas. It's beautiful, it's extremely well maintained, and I personally don't begrudge a single penny of my service charge. There are other opinions.
Thanks, Fiona. I was just going to come back on some of the points you were making. I definitely think that the communication point and the transparency point is a key bit that we heard through our previous panel. And just when you were listing the changes in the different charges, I wanted to pick up on insurance, because that's one that we've heard around insurance increases. So I just wondered if you could speak to that. Thanks.
Yeah, it's something we've raised with both Matt Pennycook and Alex Norton, the Fire Safety Minister and Housing Minister. We're very concerned about it. There are two reasons that we think are driving it in London, as well as the global issues around climate change and the impacts of that they're having on the insurance industry. But two things, one being fire safety and the other one being those water leaks. Because one of the numerous claims are to do with leaks in tall buildings, because the steel and concrete concrete framed building without water detection, it's very hard to trace where leaks are coming from, and you can have a number of flats damaged in, you think water goes down with gravity, but it crawls along these structures. So those are the two main issues. The other thing that's quite interesting about the insurance industry at the moment is we're interested in protecting the human beings who live in our homes, and the insurance industry is very interested in the asset. So the insurance industry will all often price in the difference between those two things. So where we will get a building to a certain quality that means it's safe to live in, extremely safe to live in, it doesn't mitigate all of the potential risks that an insurer is thinking about. And they will sometimes price that into premiums. So it's a very live debate between, as far as I know, the government and the Association of British Insurers on how we make this easier for people. But, you know, I do have one block where the premium has gone up 257%.
Thanks. I know we've got some other questions to come on, so I'll just let others come back on this one and then hand back to the chair. Was there anything to add on the high service charges?
I agree 100% with what Fiona's just said. I think service charge will be impacted by inflation. No doubt we've seen inflation go up and down over recent years. The energy crisis, all of those are issues that the freeholder has no control over. The increases in service charges will impact, and it doesn't matter what tenure you're living in, so it will impact leasehold, it will impact commonhold, it will impact people that live in houses. That's the issue. It is tenure agnostic. There's also the issues with building safety and the building safety regime. That's adding to the service charge. I think, and I don't want to tread on Andrew's toes, but I know the TPI did a survey where they looked at service charge levied by landlords versus service charge levied by resident-controlled companies, and there was not much difference between the two. So for us, that shows that the landlord and managing agents aren't exploiting leaseholders. It should also be noted that service charge is used exclusively for leaseholders, for the building, for the estates. That is what service charge is levied for. That is what it is used for. Also, leasehold is highly regulated. It's regulated under the lease. It's regulated in legislation. If leaseholders are concerned about their service charge, the first thing that they should do is speak to their managing agent. That's the first thing that they should do. The second thing that they may want to do is speak to their landlord. And the third thing that they can do is go to the FTT and get a determination on their service charge.
I'm sure people find that really helpful, you saying that out. Make a good little clip, I think, for residents. Andrew, have you got anything to add?
Well, the TPI service charge index has just been widely trailed, so let me not repeat that. But I will repeat, because it stands repeating, a service charge is not a profit line. A service charge is costs recovered, and those costs have gone through the roof. Reference was made earlier to reports in the media. We have had a lot of dialogue with the media. We have worked with the BBC, and the BBC have Mythbuster pages on what a service charge is, and they have also published our index. However, it remains the case that for the majority of journalists, when they hear of costs rocketing, there is a natural assumption that somebody somewhere is on the take. It's human nature, because we are cynical beasts. And it's a very easy narrative. And it's a lazy narrative, but it is not a correct narrative. So we need to be clear, it is cost recovery. And we need to be very transparent about this, because I'm afraid service charges are going to continue to go up. The standard of construction over the last 20 years, our members would tell us, has been quite poor. And far from designing out service charges, and I think, by the way, I would suggest changing that to designing down, not designing out, because we should manage people's expectations. You are not going to design out. The research has been done by one of your housing association members, which has illustrated that a building at 65 years of age is almost as cheap to drop and rebuild as it is to maintain. And where you have a leasehold or commonhold structure, a fractionally owned structure, you're not going to be dropping them. You're going to be repairing them like Trigger's broom with 3 new handles and 2 new brushes. So the cost of maintaining these buildings is going to go up, I'm afraid. Now, for that reason, transparency around service charges and a robust and truthful reporting of service charges on an annual basis is important for consumers to understand what's coming. Because as the service charges go up, we are already seeing some mortgage lenders now declining mortgages on some flats where service charges are perceived to be high. Those flats will have to be sold at some point, and what will happen is there will be a price correction. So we're now moving into the valuation of landed assets, and there will be, over time, an educational learning piece which lenders, occupiers, we as a profession will come to as to how service charges and values interact. But it's quite big stuff, so it needs to be reported really carefully and very truthfully.
And I think that's the point that's coming from all of this. It's more accountability, the communication, the transparency, that people really understand what's happening. Because I think often those stories end up in the press, just from my experience of the residents I've been speaking to, because people get frustrated and they don't know where to go to. So I think it's that. It's all part of the same problem.
So, if I may, the advice is correct, which is speak to the managing agent. I am aware that some managing agents may not be as helpful as they should be in terms of explaining those bills. They need to improve on that if they are not.
I'm helping many residents trying to understand their service charge.
What I will also say is that, and unfortunately this is the wrong audience to play this with, which is, do you know how your council tax bill is broken down? Most people don't. And therefore most people don't know how their service charge is broken down. And it's really, do we need to know? Well, yes, you should have access to that information. You should be able to drill down if you wish, but most people don't. And therefore, again, you have a shrouding of mystery around what it actually is. So that is a perception problem that needs to be solved by regulating the profession so that you can trust the bill that arrives on your door.
Thank you. We've got Assembly Member Lord Bailey very briefly.
Chair, my question has just been answered.
Oh, okay. I'll come to you, Assembly Member Small Edwards. I just wanted to add, though, to your point, whether or not people know how to figure out their council tax or their service charge. I think there is a level of accountability that you know who to find if something goes wrong. I mean, we hear a lot of negativity about housing associations, but if something goes wrong with that service charge, at least you know to, in a worst case scenario, to email Fiona if you're not able to track down a managing agent. I've done that before, sorry. But there is a wide chasm between those bodies who are regulated somehow, even if it's not quite good enough, and those where, if you're in kind of the private sector and your managing agent decides to not be contactable, then that is your situation. So I think some of what you have said might help cover that situation, but we just need to be aware of not everybody's in a landlord, not necessarily got a landlord who is aware of their responsibilities and their kind of accountability.
May I comment that, of course, RMCs are often freehold owners. Nearly half the estates that our members manage are RMC controlled. So it's not just whether there is a landlord that's contactable or whether a managing agent that's contactable, because the estate itself may still be resident controlled. So I'm sorry if the council tax analogy trod on a nerve. Thank you.
No, it didn't strike a nerve, but it helped, I think, illustrate the point. Assembly Member Small Edwards, please.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, everyone. My question is for Fiona. Some of our previous guests have told us that they believe the most egregious service charges happening in the social sector, and said that they believe incompetence is largely to blame. To what extent do you think these unreasonable charges are happening? And obviously you've suggested that it's not profiteering which is down, it was causing these charges, and said internal issues might be more at play. Could you speak a bit more about those internal issues and what you think the reasons are behind these charges?
Thank you. I do start from the point of view that they aren't unreasonable generally, because what we're doing is passing on the costs that we've had to pay. And inflation has been the biggest impact. However, I will say that we do make mistakes, because if you take L&Q, we do 500,000 repairs every year. Each one of those repairs has to be coded properly in an IT system for us to be able to pull reports out that then make up our service charges. So hence a new IT system that's 10 years overdue goes live. I need to touch some wood here on the 8th of April, which will start to make that easier. But I think it's how you deal with residents when they have a problem is the issue. It's if somebody says to me, "You're charging me for cutting a hedge I don't have." It's how quickly we can look that up, make sure and correct that mistake, and also make sure that mistake is corrected in the long term. It's not just that we give you the discount this year, that hedge is taken off our records because it doesn't exist. And that's where we, as a very large landlord of 109,000 homes, we have to get better at that. But that's for everybody, that's not just for our leaseholders. I think that there is an issue about the social sector in that we're very visible. I think the Chair has just said that if there's a problem with service charges at L&Q, you know where to go. And I think, therefore, we're easy to talk about in that we're high volume and high profile. I think where I struggle, where I'm not the freeholder, I don't hold the head lease, is where I'm trying to deal with managing agents who aren't responsive. And we've done very good work with Andrew's team about how we act as advocates on behalf of our residents who live in homes with managing agents. So, for example, we've got 10,000 homes where we provide no services at all for residents. It's all done through a managing agent. And the freeholder is the person who appoints those managing agents. And we have 10 organisations that we work with. Some of them are brilliant, fantastically responsive. Others are an utter nightmare, and Andrew and his organisation have been incredibly helpful in helping us work on that. And because we're so big and complicated and have all of these weird and wonderful arrangements, that means then for a resident of a housing association it can be quite baffling, because you look at L&Q's in charge and sometimes we're not legally or technically, but we should be morally and in trying to act as that advocate. I hope that's a long-winded answer. I hope that helps.
No, thank you very much for the response. And you kind of preempted my next question, which is around charges for things which simply don't exist. I mean, I've had a number of constituents get in touch with me who've been charged for a communal area on their service charge, and there is no communal area. So how do those kind of charges come about? Is it kind of negligence? Is it anything kind of, is there anything beyond that?
It's usually cock-up rather than conspiracy. If, again, I use the example of L&Q rather than other G15 members, over the past 12 years we merged with or acquired 7 different organisations. We did at least, in London, 3 major stock transfers from local authorities. And what happens is all of that data comes in, and it's very rare that you take a step back and actually test that data. So in setting up these new IT systems that go live in April, we have 109,000 homes. So you would think you would have 109,000 addresses. We found something like 1.2 million address records. So all of that, that's just on the address. So all of that has to be tidied up. And what we have to get better at, and I know within G15 we're certainly trying to be much better at it, is our data architecture, to make sure that not only do we cleanse the data and get it right, but we make sure we keep that data up to scratch. So, for example, there might be no hedge today, but the hedge might grow. And how do you keep a track on that? Because our ground maintenance contracts will then be cutting a hedge that our records might say doesn't exist. So it isn't that we're trying to, certainly not trying to defraud, not trying to overcharge. It's just on occasions our data will not be as good as it needs to be, and we've got to get better. But I'll go back to my earlier answer. It's what we do when people raise those queries with us and how quickly we respond and fix the problem.
Thank you. I think, Charmaine, do you want to come in?
In a previous life, I worked in-house counsel for a property management company. And so I used to see them preparing their year-end accounts. And sometimes what would happen is sometimes just invoices were just put in the wrong cost heading. Yeah. So it was error. Or sometimes invoices, one-off invoices, were obtained. And so, for example, if there were communal steps outside and then you had the flat doors, so if there was a repair to communal steps, then if there was a heading in the accounts that said communal area, that's where the invoice would go. And then people will say, well, actually, we don't have a communal area. What are you talking about? But it was the repair to the communal steps. Sometimes it's just easier to put it in that heading. I'm not saying that it's right, but I'm just saying that sometimes that it's not fraud, it's not overcharging, it's just, where do I put this invoice? Okay, that heading looks suitable. Does that make, I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you very much. Back to you, Chair.
Assembly Member Boff.
Are you sure? Oh, right. Yeah, sorry. I exposed a little bit of pre-show, well, incompetence on mine. Does the once a building that you own or manage is remediated for building safety issues, does the building insurance cost to leaseholders reduce? And perhaps I could put that to Ms. Fletcher-Smith.
In a word, no. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. It's back to that earlier point I made that sometimes insurers want to have a higher standard of fire remediation than is actually necessary under the regulations. So we're protecting life and limb, and the insurers are trying to protect a freeholder's assets, and those two things don't always join up. So an insurer will sometimes put an extra premium in if they feel that the fire remediation isn't going to mitigate every single issue. So, for example, in flats, you can plug in your own white goods on occasions, and they will put in a premium, assuming that people won't buy brand new A-rated white goods. They will make assumptions, for example, on social housing on that, which are they're not fair, but they are there.
Forgive me, but if the price you pay for your insurance reduces, is that passed on to the leaseholders?
Yes, we can only charge what we pay. Yeah.
And similarly, Mr. Bulmer, is that the case?
Just to take that last point first, whatever the insurance premium is, that's what gets recharged. So up or down, good or bad, that's what leaseholders end up paying. In answer to your main question...
Can I just drill down a little bit on that, just a bit? Does that mean specific to that building or that, what do you call that, collection of leaseholds? What? That particular development, because you apportion according to a particular segment of the development.
Correct.
So are the costs taken across the estate or focused in on particular areas? So
if we were to
so if you repair one building in an estate, well, let's take for example Barking Riverside. You know, if you fix one building, do the costs go down for that building, or are you applying that insurance liability across other buildings that may not have been affected by the work?
You may find that that's a question best directed to Fiona, but yes. What I'd like to do, if I may, first is just address a couple of points. We have, for several years now, been flagging Mind the Gap. The developer pledge requires developers to fix to life safety critical, not building safety. PAS 9980, which is the standard for external walls, there is no standard for internals, again, is life safety critical. So when we are looking at the cladding works, and I again, being pedantic, I talk about the building safety crisis, not the cladding crisis. When we look at the cladding side of it, there is a gap between building safety and life safety. And if your building drops and your hopes, fears, dreams and weddings photographs go up in ashes, then obviously the insurance company is sustaining a loss. So there is a gap there between the developer pledge and really what the building safety regulator is seeking, which is fire and structural safety. There is another gap in that quite a lot of the way that the Building Safety Act is designed is that buildings are having their external safety defects remedied, but not their internals. So we are still seeing safety defects internally, and again, a building insurer is not going to be very happy with that. So the short answer to your exam question is frequently, when buildings have been fixed, the insurance premium does not go down as far as you would expect. The third component is that the FCA were tasked with looking across their insurance market to see whether the increases in premiums were fair and reasonable. And unfortunately, they concluded that they could not get the evidence to form an opinion on that, which I find strange for a regulator of a sector to be unable to comment on pricing. So I would like to see further work done, working with the insurers on whether those premiums are fair and reasonable or not. Finally, I would also say escapes of water, which has been mentioned previously, is now a huge part of insurance premiums. So I fear that insurance premiums are not going to be dropping significantly anytime soon.
Sorry, Ms. Fletcher-Smith, on that specific point that I made about apportioning the insurance.
It's impossible to give a global answer to that because it very much depends on the nature of the development. So and the insurance company. Some insurers who work in the social housing sector will allow us to pool, or they will pool the bill and then we apportion across a number of blocks. But not all insurers allow that. Some of them will want a specific block by block approach to the insurance, which is based on the individual circumstances. So it's quite messy.
That only occurred to me because when I was a councillor for the Regent's estate in Hackney, one of the residents got very, very upset that she was being charged for work that was quite a considerable distance from where she actually lived, and I was never able to convince her that that was a price she should be paying. But it is difficult for residents to understand what they're paying for.
Absolutely. You go back to that transparency point. I mean, there's unlock goes back to the lease as well. What does the lease say? When I worked in various local authorities, there was a constant debate about, I live on the ground floor, why am I paying for the maintenance of the lift? And that's because that's what the lease says. So a lot to be done about uniformity and transparency.
Thank you very much. Before we break for 10 minutes, I don't want to labour the point, but you've touched on an issue which seems quite obvious, but why there isn't just a standardisation of those leases. Even people within the same development or same estate, whatever it might be, will have different leases and different obligations on the landlord, the freeholder and the leaseholder, and it's just unnecessarily complicated. Is there something, I appreciate common holders, not everyone's cup of tea, but is there something or a way to resolve that complexity around leases, even if it might be the G15, for example, just issues the same type of lease across all of its schemes going forward, at least for what will follow will be a bit more standardised?
So for new developments linked to either GLA or Homes England funding, there are standard leases. The issue goes back to, I have a lot of local authority stock transfer, so local authorities have a certain type of lease with a certain lease length. We did look at, just within my own organisation, the idea of standardising the lease and giving everybody the same length. The legal cost of doing that ran to about 3 million, and frankly, 3 million at the minute I need to spend investing in the existing homes rather than on lawyers to sort the leases out. I don't want to throw in AI here, but I'm going to because it's been incredibly useful. We're using AI to analyse some of our leases because it's cheaper than a lawyer. Sorry, Charmaine. But to just give us some idea of the sort of outlying weirdness of some of our leases, to see, you know, how far away are some people from that. We're doing it on a small group of properties to see if there's anything in that. There may be something, but getting to that standardisation would be wonderful, because it's really hard for our staff. You know, every time somebody rings up to say, I've got a problem, you have to go and look at the lease because you cannot be sure that it's the standard form of lease or not, which means the resident is suffering and waiting.
Thank you, Charmaine, and then Andrew, and then we'll close this half.
I think we've got to be careful what we wish for. I think in an age where people want more, buildings are becoming more complex. They're becoming places where people might work, might eat, you know. So and people want more services. So one size doesn't fit all. And when you do have one size, when you're trying to shoehorn it into one building, that's where you're going to have your problems, because the building will not reflect the lease, or the lease will not reflect the building, it will not reflect the services, and you will have disputes. So I think if we want more, and if we want our buildings to do more, and if we want them to be high-tech, then that's what comes with the lease, and it comes with a bespoke lease, not a standardised lease.
There's looking backwards and there's looking forwards. Looking backwards, changing leases on existing developments is problematic, because whenever you change a lease, there will be winners and losers. And unless you get 100% agreement, including 100% agreement to pay for the thing, for the exercise, then retrospectively refitting leases is challenging. So I think that's pretty much a non-starter, albeit a lovely idea. Moving forward, Common Hold, of course, has a prescribed structure. So that is an attraction, but of course that also contains the ability to then put in bespoke provisions. I think, bearing in mind that we're going to have leasehold for some time to come, if there are leases, that ambition, which is expressed in the Common Hold legislation, if that were brought forward to try and at least commonalise language, structure of leases, then that would be helpful.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We're going to take a break now. It'll be back at 15:42. everybody. We'll go straight to our next section, which is on shared ownership. And the first question is from Assembly Member Small Edwards.
Thank you very much, Chair. My question is to the Deputy Mayor. Shared ownership is, of course, marketed as an affordable housing product. But our survey respondents felt that while it may be affordable for many at the point of sale, it can quickly become unaffordable, given rising rents and particularly really quickly increasing service charges. Do you recognise that as a problem in London? And if so, what has the GLA done to tackle issues with affordability? And additionally, what more are you considering doing, particularly when it comes to the next iteration of the Affordable Homes Programme and shared ownership's role within that?
So I think that there are undoubtedly cases where service charges for shared owners have increased above, to a much higher level after the first after the first sale. It is. I think it goes back to my point I was making earlier about making sure that we are designing. I will say designing down, but I did say when I said design out, I did mean down because we're almost certainly never going to eliminate them entirely. But designing down service charges, that's a part of our service charges charter. It's an expectation that all of our partners in the AHP sign up to that. Because we want to do what we can to spread best practice and make sure that the partners that we are working with are doing everything they can, both to reduce costs for shared owners, but also make sure that the shared owner experience, where they have complaints or issues and things like that, and there are always in any system going to be complaints, that they're dealt with fairly and properly and promptly. I think that's our role here. As I've said earlier, we're not a regulator, but we do want to drive best practice where we can.
Thank you for that response. And what role do you think shared ownership is going to play going forward in the next iteration of the Affordable Homes Programme?
That's a very interesting question and a very pertinent question. I think it's going to play less of a role, if I'm honest with you. It already is. So the way things have shifted, I mean, under the previous government, based on the particular passions of particular housing secretaries. So when Robert Jenrick was housing secretary, there was a great emphasis on shared ownership and what were then called first homes, although those didn't really get off the ground at all in London. When Michael Gove took over, there was a shift more towards social rent, and currently, the vast majority of our programme is now allocated towards social rent. It is the kind of tenure that is most needed and most affordable in London. I would expect, and we are at the most very early stages of what a next affordable homes programme would look like, but I would expect the strong emphasis on social rent to continue. I would expect shared ownership to still be there in some form, but in a much smaller form. And I would expect that on the intermediate side, where shared ownership sits, that there is a greater role for intermediate rented products versus shared ownership. What I would say, though, is outside of our programmes, it will absolutely still continue to be delivered through the planning system, unfunded as Section 106.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. Back to you, Chair.
Assembly Member Garbutt.
Thank you. Just to clarify, just on the point that you were just making then around shared ownership, so just to clarify, do you think it should be considered as affordable homes in the percentage of a new development?
Yes, it is a form of affordable housing. If you look at the incomes of the households who access shared ownership versus the household incomes of those who buy outright, I think it's 88. The average household income, I think, is 88,000 for outright buyers. It's around 45,000 for shared owners. So I think it absolutely has a role to play. The evidence from the 2017 Strategic Housing Market Assessment is that it has a role to play. I think, though, that role will be diminishing going forwards, as I've set out to Assembly Member Small Edwards.
I guess that was the question, wasn't it? That maybe at the point of sale, it was affordable if you have 45k income, but as Fiona was explaining, that with that rise in service charge, can it be considered an affordable form if it isn't over its life term?
And the related point I would just make, that I meant to make to Assembly Member Small Edwards, I know this happens, that whether, and this is not specific to the social rented sector. It is across the board with developers. There is, I think, a drive certainly to keep the level of service charges down at the beginning, because, of course, that makes properties more attractive to sell. I think actually that's the sort of thing that needs to be pushed out of the system. I think that there needs to be much more clarity, and we really believe in clarity and transparency about what the service charges are likely to be over a period of time with that property. We've tried to extend that transparency with things like mandating key information documents and things like that for shared owners of homes that we fund. But I do think it's important that that prospective shared owners are given all the necessary information that they need when they are considering purchasing a property.
Thanks. That really airs some of the issues. 'Cause I think, my concern is that it's used against that affordable target, and then it's considered affordable tenure, which actually, as we're hearing, it might not be. But Fiona, my question was coming to you, and I know you mentioned some of this earlier when you were talking about increasing in service charges. So we did hear around specifically shared ownership being tricky in terms of service charges, poor service, poor transparency and poor address. I just wondered if that tallied with the G15 understanding of the issues with this tenure, and if there's anything the G15 are doing to improve the experience of shared owners. Thanks.
Sure. It's so the issue of shared owners is very similar to leasehold generally. So back to transparency, accountability, and proper engagement with leaseholders who are shared owners. For me, it's also about that point that the Deputy Mayor has just made, which is about when we sell, we have to be better at the information that we give and be very, very transparent with people that things will change. So we at L&Q are founder members and have signed up to pilot the Shared Ownership Council Code of Conduct, which is about looking at our sales processes to make sure that we're absolutely clear with people about what the liabilities are when you become a shared owner. We're also doing some research at the moment, which is about that point about it is affordable when you move in, but over time, what has happened? Now, we at L&Q have been involved in shared ownership since the late 80s, so we've got lots of data that we can look at, and we're particularly interested in since 2019, what has happened to that affordability for our shared owners. What I'm slightly worried about, though, and sort of slight disagreement with the Deputy Mayor, which is always a difficult place to be because he gives us money to build. So I'll just be careful. Yes, just careful how I say this. But people aspire to be homeowners, and it's what do we do for those people who would like to get on the property ladder and need to and want to live in London. So where shared ownership over the years has been a fantastic way of doing that is if you don't have the bank of mum and dad behind you, the deposit you're paying is a deposit on whatever you're buying. So if you buy 25%, you're only paying a deposit on that, which is a lot easier than trying to find an average deposit in London of 45 to 50,000. And what that gives you access to then is capital appreciation on the bit you own. So people want to be part of that still. And when I build shared ownership houses outside London, freehold houses, my goodness, honestly, there are riots nearly in the lists of people who queue up to get them. It's just very difficult when it's leasehold shared ownership. And that is not because of shared ownership on its own, it is also with those issues of leasehold. And then a sort of wider sort of issue that I'm worried about for the whole country is I know that if I need care in my old age, I'm very old, and the equity, because I was able to buy a flat in London age 19 because it was 30 grand, and my kids are not going to be able to do that. Who's going to pay for the care of those people who are priced out of home ownership? Because there is a national assumption that equity in home ownership is going to bail us out in the social care debate. So there are all sorts of reasons that I worry about us not giving people access to home ownership who can afford it and who want it.
Thank you. And just a quick follow-up. while I've got the mic, are any of the G15 members providers buying back unmortgageable shared ownership properties?
We all have policies that are about exceptional purchase, but it is expensive. And we have been exploring ideas with the GLA about whether we can widen that scheme, particularly for people who have compelling needs to sell and move and are unable to sell. But we have a very small pot available across the G15 to do it, but we do all have policies to where we have to, or where we can.
Okay, it might be quite interesting for us to follow that up, but I'll hand back to you, Chair.
Okay, yes, it would be really helpful if you could share that with us around your distressed sales policies. Assembly Member Lord Bailey, very briefly.
Very briefly, this is a warm-up for you, Kate, so that you're ready. Listen, this education piece is really important, and couldn't the mayor have some kind of stake, some kind of portal to just, because I used to be in shared ownership and nobody pointed out to me I owned 50% of the property but 100% of the risk, and I'd have liked to have known that before I got involved, and I keep complimenting your team, don't let Sadiq find out.
Twice in 2 days.
I know, it's going pear-shaped over here.
There will be words.
Yeah, he has been good around leasehold and extended and leasehold. This is another area he could really do something, because Londoners would trust if it was on the mayor's website, you know, these are the basic... What does leasehold mean? People think they are a home owner when they buy a lease. Really? Are you? No, probably not. You know, is there a way that your team, Tom, Kate, could put that information out there?
Yeah, so as Tom mentioned, we already heavily promote key information documents. So I don't want to speculate on when you bought your shared ownership flat, but people buying the flats that are being built through the current Affordable Homes Programme, they should be being provided with key information documents, which I think go a long way to giving people those essential facts early at the point where they're considering shared ownership and before they go through the conveyancing of this is what it means, these are your obligations, these are the risks. And then to Fiona's point about people wanting to be homeowners, they can consider that in the round and make an informed decision. So we are very much expecting that of partners now. Separately, there is a whole process underway which hopefully will become visible to you all very soon to do some improvements on the GLA website. So where you feel this information is currently hard to find, we can definitely look at how we can make that more prominent on the website and give people some of that basic information. But I think we probably do need to consider that relationship between the housing association or local authority in some cases and the potential buyer as the key point where this information needs to be given, and that's why we're putting so much of the emphasis on the landlord to make sure that the key information documents are available at the point of first interest, but definitely at the point of sale.
I see where you're coming from, because you're, as Deputy Mayor, Tom, you're right when a person is getting close to making those decisions, but as Mayor, I'd like him to have that conversation, you know, before that point, long before that point. When you're 17, someone should be pointing out to you, for instance, you know, if you rent a student flat, you've just signed a contract. You can't walk off if situation changes. If you're 25 and you're considering shared ownership, this is what it actually means. You know, couldn't the mayor be having an even a sort of educational content? If you don't have middle-class parents who've been through this is all a horrible surprise to you.
I mean, I think what you're saying sounds more like something that sixth forms or schools should be preparing, or colleges should be preparing their students for when they are about to leave. So I'm not sure it's a particular sort of area of locus for City Hall. In terms of the website, though, as Kate said, it's being updated. I think that we already have information on there for renters, about renters' rights, so I don't see that it is sort of beyond the realms of possibility for us to add something there, if it's not already there, in relation to shared ownership that we can signpost people to.
And my last little plea, one of my things I want to achieve, Chair, we should change leasehold. It should be called something else. I think because it's misleading. I think the whole thing is misleading. When you buy that lease, you think you're a homeowner. Turns out you're not. But that's my personal rant over.
Okay, so there is a later question about what the Deputy Mayor is going to do around the Leasehold Advice Centre that was passed at the budget and the common hold, freehold pilot that didn't happen. So maybe we'll come back to that. But I've got Andrew and then Charmaine, and then we'll move on to the next person.
Thank you. We have long advocated for the How to Lease guide to be provided to all potential purchasers of a lease, shared ownership or otherwise, at the earliest point in the transaction. You are required to do that in rented, private rented. You have to give them a how to rent guide, a how to lease guide, which can also be circulated, for example, with a service charge demand, etc., to keep the information fresh in the consumer's mind. A simple, agile document which goes right across the tenure, which is distributed at the early point of the transactional decision. We have long advocated for that to be introduced.
I'd just like to say I am a property solicitor and have been for in excess of, I think, 25 years. That's what I started doing. I know. But what I would say is when I was instructed to buy and sell leasehold flats, that's exactly what I did. I had to do a title document which explained exactly what the leaseholder or the prospective leaseholder was getting, the term, the duration, the ground rent, how long the ground rent would be until it went up. All of these things were explained in, to be fair, it was probably about a 15, 20-page document. I can't guarantee that my clients read it, but what I did do was ask them to sign it and send it back to me so I knew that they'd read it. So that's what I would say. Look, when property solicitors are doing this conveyancing, are buying and selling flats for people, they generally do tell people what the lease says. I know that I certainly was doing that.
Very briefly.
I must come back on that. I support everything Charmaine says, but I'm afraid I don't agree with it, if you know what I mean. The conveyancing, bucket shop conveyancing, especially where that conveyancing is being provided by the recommended solicitor from the developer, is in some occasions now providing lots of information to the buyer but no advice. I believe that's one of the contributory factors to the doubling ground rent situation, where people were told that they had a doubling ground rent, but they didn't understand or appreciate the impact of that doubling ground rent. So I believe that absolutely lawyers who give good advice, considered advice to their purchaser, that is the right way to go. But beware of the trend towards provision of information but without provision of advice. And 400-page buyer's packs mean that an awful lot of key information is hidden in plain sight.
Just really quickly, but that is leasehold. If you are buying a flat and you're living with other people, you have shared rights. You have there are covenants, there are rules that you have to abide by, and those are the documents that you've got to read. That is leasehold. Common hold will be exactly the same. You've got the common hold community statement with, and it sets out how you will live together. That is what you're buying into. If that's not what you're interested in, and if you don't want to have all of those rules and regulations, you're going to have to move to a freehold, I think.
Okay. Thank you for that. I just had a thought before I move on to the next questioner. Perhaps a reflection for the G15, would that be something that could be provided in like your sales suites and the Homes for London portal, so that people know that they are buying a lease?
So what we're doing with the Shared Ownership Council at the moment is exactly that, piloting that code within L&Q, which sets out all of those points. That isn't just, as Andrew's saying, bombarding people with shed loads of information. It's actually providing the proper advice about what buying this means. But we would happily take on board any other suggestions that you have.
Thank you. Assembly Member Cooper, please.
Thanks very much, Chair. And I would just mention that I represent Wandsworth as well as Merton, where half the council stock now consists of about 17,000 leaseholders, and where the previous administration had no interest in social housing. So I can't tell you how many shared ownership flats there are, but there's quite a few, I think, that are owned by L&Q, amongst other members of the G15. So we are land of leasehold and land of shared ownership in Wandsworth, for sure. And Fiona, I noticed that you mentioned that L&Q has been monitoring its own shared ownership situation. Is that common to the rest of the G15? Do you have a sort of generally developed protocol about monitoring what's going on for people after they've bought in, hopefully when it is affordable, looking at the impact of changes in rent and service charges in terms of affordability for people as it goes forward? And does that drive people being able to be fast-tracked towards staircasing down at all? Does that happen?
So the piece of research that we've just commissioned is across the G15 to figure out from purchase to where you are now, how has affordability changed and what does that mean? So that research then could do exactly that, could inform policies around staircasing down, as well as other options for people, such as tenure changes, if we can manage that and afford that. But it is right across the G15. It's not just an L&Q issue.
It absolutely, well, it's not just a Wandsworth issue, although obviously I started from there, but we get written to constantly by people who feel that they are trapped into one location and they want to move, or trapped into one size of property and they want to move. So I just wondered if that was, so that's a piece of research that's being done now, so that presumably you would feel able to share all the results with us.
Absolutely. It's underway at the moment. We should finish it around May time. And not that I'm looking forward to this, but whoever takes over from me as chair of G15 in May, Ian McDermott, would happily come back. It's going to be a really interesting piece of work, and I think what's superbly interesting is what we use that research for, rather than just, oh, that's interesting. How does it inform policy?
Well, absolutely. That's why I threw in the question about staircasing downwards, but also sales opportunities as well for people. So what do G15 members do at the moment, before the research arrives, to ensure that service charges represent the best possible value for money for shared owners? Obviously for everybody, but in this case specifically looking at shared owners.
So we do think about everybody when we do this, because it's vital that we get best value for money that we possibly get. So if I use the L&Q example, we're very robust in our procurement methods in terms of the contracts that we bring in, and we have introduced over the last 2 years a far more muscular, I suppose is the word, approach to contract management. So when contractors, or if contractors fail to deliver, that they are sacked, their invoices aren't paid. And it's very interesting, my own inbox is now regularly full of contractors saying, I haven't had my invoice paid, and when you check why that is, it's because the work wasn't done. So it's about that robust approach to value for money through procurement. It's also about checking. It's also about this, I have to be careful about the designing down, but also when we do upgrades to buildings, it's making sure that we're using materials that have a shelf life that is capable of lasting more than a couple of years, that is capable of dealing with, especially mixed-use developments, child densities. Children are wonderful, but they can be very sore on communal areas. So about designing buildings where children and families can live without causing service charge increases through, for example, we had a block in Lewisham where every time a child took a bike or a scooter out through the communal area, the handlebars would go through the plasterwork. So little things like that really matter, because that's a huge charge. We more or less had a caretaker whose full-time job was filling in the holes. So it's about making sure that we focus on that. It's also about involving residents. So we have a leaseholder panel that we consult on their ideas, their thoughts about how we could be better. It's about making sure that our systems and processes mean there aren't additional costs caused by L&Q being inefficient in terms of our back office systems. So it's constant and conscious, I suppose is how I'd put it.
Yes, our children appearing after people who've exercised the shared ownership option and then being overcrowded and unable to move is quite an issue that comes into my postback. But I'll leave it there, Chair. Thank you.
Apologies. Assembly Member Small Edwards, please.
Thank you, Chair. My question again is to Fiona. And survey respondents told us that shared owners pay more in service charges than private leaseholders in the same block because they pay a management fee both to the housing association and to the managing agent. What service do shared owners receive for this charge to the housing association?
So there is a lot of misinformation around about what people pay, and it goes back to the repeated point a few of us have made about that transparency, so that we're very clear with people, what do you pay? It's not the case that they will be paying different charges to leaseholders in the block. It is they will be paying rent. And there is a question then about the transparency on the rent side of what they pay, as well as the transparency on the service charge. So it's not that they're paying different charges, it is that they pay extra charges. And I think we've focused a lot on being very transparent about how your service charge is made up. And I'm the first one to admit we're not there yet, but we also need to be transparent with shared owners about what the rent is made up of as well.
Okay, so you don't believe anyone's paying management fees in both cases, it's just ground rent, they're getting them confused?
No, they won't. They will be paying a service charge to us, and they will be paying rent to us, and they'll be paying a mortgage. And those three bills together, the service charges, we're able to, in most cases, explain exactly what those invoices make up that service charge. The issue is with rent, it's being very clear with people how do we make up a rent for a shared ownership home, because that is a global figure that is then just apportioned to that home.
Okay, thank you.
Assembly Member Lord Bailey.
Oh, sorry, come to GLA and Fiona's. We've heard that social tenants in London don't have the same legal rights as leaseholders in terms of seeing the full service charge statement. Do you recognise that? What can be done about this if that's the case, and ahead of any legal changes?
So it isn't a legal right, but again, as a landlord for a social housing tenant, if they want to know what I'm spending money on, I have a duty to be able to tell them what that is. So our Resident Services Board, which is a key part of the governance of L&Q, for example, will dive into contracts and how we're managing those contracts and how those costs flow into residents' bills. So it all goes back to transparency. Just because you've got a lease that says I should be transparent with you, it doesn't mean that just because you have a tenancy agreement that doesn't. I should be equally transparent with you as a tenant as I am with a leaseholder.
Even though that's the case, you're the G15, you are the largest 15. Is this widespread? Is that best practice? Is that something that your members do? And what about the smaller housing associations who might not have the capacity?
I can't speak on behalf of the smaller associations, but all G15 members aim to be very transparent with residents, whether you're a leaseholder, a shared owner, a freeholder who pays an estate charge, or a social housing tenant, or an intermediate rented tenant. As a housing charity, we should be very open in how we spend our money. And the global accounts for housing associations will tell you figures up at that level. But if you're living on an estate in Lewisham, you want to know, is that ground maintenance contractor doing what they're supposed to do, and are we being fleeced by them, and are we getting good value for money? And that's the same whether you're a leaseholder, a shared owner, or a social housing tenant. So we owe that same duty of transparency to all of the residents. And indeed, within the Regulator for Social Housing consumer standard, that transparency is equally important for social housing tenants.
Just before I come to you, Deputy Mayor, is that information easy to access?
None of it is easy to access.
Right, okay.
But if we get it right for leaseholders, we're getting it right for everybody. So, back to the earlier example I used, L&Q do 500,000 repairs a year. And Charmaine's point, if one of those is miscoded, it just flies off into the wrong place, and then trying to figure that out. So we've got to get better at record-keeping data and systems, so that at the press of a button, any of our residents can get a really good idea of where the money went.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor?
Just to add very briefly, Firstly, yes, I think social tenants deserve the same transparency as leaseholders, and I think this was probably resolved, as Fiona has mentioned, there is a consumer standard around transparency. Perhaps whether it's a regulator or the government could just clarify that includes a breakdown of service charges, and then, that should resolve this.
Fiona, just to come back to you, is there any room for better technology in here? I follow the car industry, which is very complicated, but they code things and they use barcodes and the like to sort of get past human error as best they can. Is there any room here for you to do similar things?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a big fan of finding technological solutions to this. We've just started using Copilot, which I think a lot of people use now, and it's incredible in terms of just searching our own records and finding information. So absolutely, we do use barcoding for our caretaking and cleaning staff already. But yeah, it's anywhere we can using technology to make it more efficient, so that then we can use resources for 30% of the people who are housed by L&Q are vulnerable in lots of ways, and then we use our human resource to be able to engage with people on a human-to-human basis by making everything else run smoothly with barcodes or technology.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Assembly Member Garbutt.
Thanks. Just to quickly pick up on a point that was just made, Fiona, just because you said that, the need for transparency, which I think we all commit to, I just wondered if there's a timeline or an idea of when residents will, when that will be resolved.
So the consumer standard came in about 2 years ago now, so it already exists. What we're all working on as a sector is getting those systems to work so that we're able to respond quickly to people's requests for transparency. But if a resident asks me now, where did you spend that money and what on, we endeavour to answer that question. It just takes too long, and that can lead to frustration. It needs to be, click of a switch, or even better, if you want to log on to your account on our website, you can see what's spent in your blog.
And is there a timescale for that? Like, will it be a month, 6 months, a year? Like, what's the?
So where are we now? 25. So 2028, we will have finished implementing our IT systems. And so, for example, our major works contracts, you'll be able to put in your postcode and your house number, and you'll be told, your new windows are due to be replaced in such a year. But it's 2028 is where
for everybody. So
for everybody at L&Q.
Okay.
I can't speak on behalf
Gosh,
of G15.
Still a long time, isn't it? But yeah, I know you're doing the work. Just a quick question for the Deputy Mayor. I know we've had a conversation about this, but just on the good practice guidance for estate regeneration, and I know that social tenants have a full right to property on the regenerated estate, but often they experience increases in service charges on the new redeveloped estate. So I just wondered if you're monitoring that so they're not paying through the roof in their new homes.
I don't think that's something we would monitor. I don't know if GLA planning would have any data on. No, we would monitor that at all. No, I don't think it is something that we would monitor.
Yeah. We have a couple of regen schemes where we have capped the service charges of returning both leaseholders and tenants, and that's a commitment made as part of the regeneration scheme at the early stages of consultation. But
is that L&Q? Sorry,
that's
okay.
L&Q. Yeah, and it's I've used it in local authorities as well, where you try and cap for returning residents on the assumption that that cap is for possibly 20 to 30 years, and then changes at relet. Yeah.
I mean, that would be great if we can have that as a standard for returning residents.
It's all about if you can afford it and if it's viable.
But then it makes but then obviously they're being subjected to it anyway. Let's not get into estate regeneration, but yeah. Great,
no,
thank you.
Wrong committee, but thank you. Excuse me. Oh, that's me. I spent my whole day in this room, so apologies. My question is to the Deputy Mayor, and I touched on this already. So earlier this month, the Assembly unanimously passed a motion on the Mayor to do the pilot of Commonhold and on GLA Group land, and I just wondered if that is something that is going to go ahead potentially, given that that was something that was in the manifesto. And I also have a follow-on question about the Leasehold Advice Centre, which I appreciate was only yesterday. But in the context of today's conversation, just this committee would be really interested in the progress of both of those.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so as you know, the Common Hold pilot was a manifesto commitment from the 2021 manifesto. Around that time, the government then committed to Common Hold, the then government committed to Common Hold reform. So a decision was taken that it made more sense to hold off until the Common Hold reform had been introduced, so that, given that the pilot is to test something, we weren't testing an outdated system that already had various issues that we've discussed that currently make it harder to deliver. Unfortunately, as we know, when the the bill and then the act was passed, it didn't include the necessary reforms that we needed. We very much hope that, we have been told by the government, it's been announced, they are going to take forward further reforms. I think at that point we would then need to take stock about whether or not this is then something that could be delivered on GLA land, or if it is something that following that point will become the default anyway. So we will have to take a view about whether we are. I mean, if it becomes a default, then by definition, it will be delivered on GLA land anyway.
Thank you, Assembly Member Boff.
So the Mayor, as recently as 2024, has committed himself to carrying out, I believe, a pilot. And an Assembly member back in 2019 suggested that there should be a pilot, and the Mayor, I can't remember his name, I've forgotten. The point of having a pilot is to prove it can work. Don't you think you should be investing in proving that it can work? Because we've had a lot of evidence today from Miss McQueen-Prince. It's a nightmare, and it's never going to work, and all sorts of things wrong with it. You could prove it could work. You've got enough land. You've got the money. Why aren't you doing it?
So again, I think the issue was that we would be testing it under. We thought at the time we would be testing it under a system that was just about to be reformed. It turned out that the system was not being reformed in the way that we needed to. So, for example, we talked a bit about common hold and shared ownership. Any development, as you know, in London has to be, in terms of affordable housing, the affordable housing has to include at least 30% intermediate housing. That would have had to be shared ownership because at that time...
You don't have to do that as if it's part of a wider development. You don't have to say one block has to be has to include intermediate.
I think that the challenge of delivering shared ownership as common hold, i.e. it was impossible, was certainly a key barrier that would have been addressed by the recommendations of the law.
So what's the timeline now? Because obviously if we're talking about the timeline and you're saying you've said we would have done it, it's just the government was taking so long to deliver anything. What's the timeline for delivering it now then? Or are you, how long are you going to wait before you take that step towards providing a pilot? How long will government...
We have, I believe, been promised a white paper this year on common hold reform.
So we get one on December the 31st of this year. And then that's the white paper, and then they'll consider it for another year, possibly a year. There might be all sorts of considerations. But you could run a pilot now.
I mean, I think, again, it comes down to the issue of piloting something which is about to change. So we're not actually piloting the common hold.
So it takes a while to plan these things. What about starting now and be informed by what happens for what comes forward from government. Why not start the work? And if you have to change the plans halfway through, at least you know where you're going to build it, what it's going to look like. I can suggest a place on Barking Riverside you could
I'm sure,
put one
I'm
in.
sure you could.
And you could start that now.
I mean, I will definitely take it under consideration, Assemblymember Boff. I do think that there are challenges doing it under
under consideration.
the current,
I want you to
under the
recognise
current framework.
Yeah, I don't want you to take it into consideration. I want you to recognise that there's a firm commitment from the Mayor to deliver a pilot, and there's a firm commitment from yourself in 2019 that a pilot should happen. So I'm just saying, turn your words into action.
Again, I think that there are difficulties delivering it under the current system when that system is, well, we hope now about to be reformed by this government.
And if you're saying the Mayor is not willing to do difficult things, well, that's fine. But we know where we're heading. We know that this is the future. It would be great if he could seize the opportunity of being.
Well, I think it is. I think it is going to be the future because we've had a commitment from the government that they are going to reform the system and they are going to bring this in as the default tenure.
Yeah, not persuaded.
Would you like to continue with 15 and 16?
Yes, I'd forgotten I was also asking another question as well. Yeah. No, that's fine. Where am I? One moment. I'll just get my papers. Yeah, I got it. Got it. Would the, I shouldn't have paused really because I should have led on straight from that. Would the G15 members be willing to take part in a common whole pilot, Ms. Fletcher-Smith?
We're always up for a pilot to see if something works or doesn't. The difficulty is, though, going back to my earlier point, we tend to focus on shared ownership and social rent. We're not entirely sure that this would work. And if we're dealing with social housing, social rented and shared ownership, we might not be the ideal landlord to test this on.
And predominantly your business model is now about, it's pulled away from building new places anyway, haven't you?
We're still building.
Are you?
We are, yeah, Barking Riverside. We are still.
But that was kind of a long-term commitment.
No, we are still on site and building. It is true that the G15 generally are building less than we would like to, but we see that as a short-term cycle. We have, what have we got? 1 in 21 children homeless in the capital now, so we really want to get back building. But I'm not sure common hold is going to fit with our building programme.
What, perhaps to the GLA, Ms. Webb, perhaps, what impact have the Service Charge Charter and Leasehold Guide for Londoners had? Do you have any plans to update these documents?
So the current document was updated in 2021 and was a very robust collaboration process, bringing in several housing associations, local authorities, as well as representatives from leaseholder groups. It was very interesting actually hearing Fiona's evidence throughout, because one of the things that came through those discussions was IT and often the difficulty in getting organisations to, in some cases, prioritise, but in other times just plan the level of sort of internal priority and new IT functionality to really support better processes. And I think one of the great things about the document and the fact that it is an expectation on partners is it helps crystallise those internal business plans to prioritise this work and do some of the kind of innovative work that Fiona's spoken to. But I think given that it was updated in 2021, I think we very much still hold that the fundamental principles are still the right ones. So designing down services charges, transparency, better information about redress when things go wrong. I don't think anyone would argue that those are not the right frameworks still. We're still not at the point where we have 100% take-up by investment partners in the AHP. So I think that's where we need to be focusing and ensuring that it is a document that organisations feel they can deliver, rather than tweaking it or seeking to reform it in a way which I think doesn't sort of address the fundamental issues, which are take up, and also whether the overall operating environment is able to bring down the affordability for the reasons Fiona and others have spoken to, which is that a lot of the charges that people are struggling with are for factors outside of landlords' control, rather than just in the kind of design or administration of service charges.
Our survey revealed that there was a requirement for the GLA or the Mayor to establish a support hub or a fund for leaseholders to access legal advice. Have you considered that?
No, I mean, this I know has been a long-standing interest, particularly of Assembly Member Bakari, who's not on this committee. I don't think that that's a role that the GLA can play. It would be expensive. We don't have the budget, for example, to set something up that would be in any way meaningful. I've seen previous Assembly budget amendments on this, which I think, I have to say, really quite substantially underestimate the cost of running something that is required to provide legal advice. And I think perhaps in one case I saw provide sort of counselling and support and things like that. I would also say that this is a national issue. And therefore, I think would require a national response. What the Mayor has said is that the existing lease service ought to be reformed and improved in order that leaseholders actually get a better service nationally from that particular organisation.
So the Mayor once again is saying what he thinks should happen, but surely he should do something. You know that the Assembly voted unanimously to establish a leasehold advice centre, and there was a figure put in there, and we suggested an amount of staffing. Perhaps that's not enough staffing, perhaps it's too much, but it's a start. It's a start for the Mayor to actually say to leaseholders, I understand your situation. I understand that many leaseholders are trapped, and a lot of leaseholders won't want to use the service at all. They're perfectly happy. But there are a significant number of leaseholders who feel trapped by in leasehold prisons. Don't you think the Mayor should be helping them by establishing some kind of hub or advice centre?
I think the Mayor has been helping leaseholders through the changes that we've made, particularly around shared ownership, 990-year leases, key information documents, the Service Charges Charter. I don't think that we would be adequately resourced to set up a organisation or a body that could provide the level of service that I think the Assembly would like it to provide within the budget that the GLA has. I simply do not think... I simply do not think it is something that we would be able to do, Assembly Member Bond.
So you reject it, but I recognise you can put into place things that affect future leaseholds. But I'm talking about people who are currently trapped. A record number of leaseholders live in London. There are a high proportion of them who feel very stressed, pushing their mental health to the limits because of the situation they found themselves in. But you're saying there's nobody to talk to.
I'm saying that there is an organisation that is there that needs to be reformed and improved, and I think that is the key thing. I mean, you're absolutely right that London has a much higher proportion of leaseholders than the rest of the country, but this is still a national issue. Would we be in a situation where if someone from, say, Manchester phoned up, if we set this up and they phoned up, would we say, I'm sorry, we can't help you. Yes. This is just for, London council tax payers, for example.
If I ring up another area about my council tax, they're not going to answer me,
I think this is something that, if it were to be done properly, would need to be done on a national basis and not just in London. I don't think this is something that the GLA is best placed to deliver.
So no help from the Mayor?
No, it's not no help for the Mayor. As I've said, I've set out the ways in which the Mayor has, through the levers that we have, through the funding levers that we have, as the Housing Investment Authority, how we are improving the system for leaseholders. I'm saying that this particular thing is not something that it would be that the GLA is best placed to deliver. And I'll bring Kate in now because she wants to come in.
Yeah, and I may be speaking slightly out of turn for my role, but if Tom asked me to scope this up, the first thing I'm saying to you is, well, I need to consider the equalities impacts across all Londoners. Why are you asking me only to scope up a service for leaseholders when we also have private tenants who are living in what is rightly often called the Wild West? Legislative reform coming would improve things, but I think we would all agree there is a serious need for legal advice of private tenants. Social tenants would also make the same claim. We have lots of Londoners who have no recourse to public funds who would greatly benefit from increased legal assistance. I think in the world of constrained GLA resources, it's very curious that we would focus a new intervention just for leaseholders when I think maybe the challenge that the Assembly is talking to is about access to legal advice and support more broadly, the retrenchment of legal aid, but let's not pretend this is just a challenge for leaseholders, and it becomes quite curious to justify why the GLA would be acting in that space first.
I don't want to make this a dialogue, Chair, and I'll bring it to an end, but it's only to say there is a difference between a tenant and a leaseholder. One is about home ownership or reputed home ownership, and the other one is about being a tenant. And that's how you focus the equalities. But it's curious. I mean, make an effort. Perhaps get involved with other organisations, perhaps with the London boroughs, perhaps with the G15, in order to establish this. That's what we're saying. But anyway, we'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Thank you both. We've got Charmaine, so we might backtrack a little, so apologies. And then we have a handful of questions. So thank you very much in advance for a little bit of extra time.
Okay, it was just about the common hold pilot. I've said it before, and I'll just say it again, that we think leasehold can sit alongside common hold, also with shared ownership. For it to sit within common hold, it will need leasehold, the permissible residential leases. That's what I think it's called. So I just wanted to reiterate that point. Also, in terms of the pilot, when I read that article, what I thought was, well, why would we have a pilot when we know that the legislation currently as it is isn't quite right, and we also know that the Law Commission's recommendations aren't quite right? So why would we have a pilot knowing that? But what we do have is common hold developments, 20 or less or whatever the number is. What we should be doing, or what you might want to do, or what I thought would be a good idea, was find out how those common hold developments are working. What's the state and condition of those buildings? What do the last 3 years' accounts look like in terms of the Common Hold Association and in terms of the contribution towards costs? What do they look like? Credit control, how are they being credit controlled? What does that look like? What does enforcement look like? Do they have any problems? Profile of the building, who's living in those buildings? Is it the owners, or is it have they been let out? And fire risk assessments. When was the last one undertaken? What does it look like? What are the recommendations? And insurance claims. What do the last 3 years' insurance claims look like? That will give you a really good insight into, one, how that common hold building is working from, I suppose, a repair and maintenance kind of aspect, also in just a living aspect, how people are living together. Also, in a financial aspect, it will give you so much, and then you can take that information, and maybe that's the information that you use in the draft legislation. So that's all I wanted to say on that.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Charmaine. Assembly Member Small-Edwards.
Thank you, Chair. My question is to the GLA, and guests at the last meeting and a number of shared owner respondents stated that they want rent and service charges to be capped. And the London Living Rent Scheme and the proposed Key Worker Living Rent Scheme both both place caps on rent and on service charges. So could there not also be a cap placed on service charges as a prerequisite for GLA funding shared ownership?
I presume you're talking about a cap, say, over, not necessarily at the first let or the first sale, but throughout the life. I mean, the first thing I would say is there's not any GLA research on this, so it's difficult in some ways to comment. But I think I would reflect on what we heard from Fiona earlier, just around how costs have risen for these services well above inflation. So I guess my kind of concern, as nice and simple as it sounds, doing, say, CPI +1 or something like that for service charges, if the cost of those services to the owner of the building are increasing at a much higher rate than that, they're having to either take a big loss or significantly reduce the quality of the services that are being provided. I mean, some of which it won't be possible to reduce the quality because they would be safety critical. So I would say, as I say, we've not looked into this issue or we don't have any research on this issue, but just based on what we're hearing, I think that as attractive as it may sound, there could be some quite significant problems with that.
If it's being done kind of for London Living Rent and for the key worker living rent properties, you don't think it's something that we could potentially look into?
So, I mean, that is something obviously that is signed up to, by providers right at the start. It's part of the package. I suspect that it probably does reduce the attractiveness of delivering potentially those from a provider perspective. That may be the case. But I think we should just tread a bit carefully in terms of what the implications of this could be, given that we know that costs are rising significantly. Do you want to come in, Kate?
Yes, please. So you're right that for London Living Rent there is a cap which includes the service charge, but it's not the service charge itself which is capped. So what we have effectively done is thrown to providers the challenge of this is the total cost which is permissible under the London Living Rent banner, and you therefore have to cut your cloth on the rental side so that you can keep the combination of rents and service charges within this benchmark. As Tom has kind of alluded to, there is potentially a deliverability challenge there, particularly in the last couple of years where inflation has been so much higher than expected, where that does mean that providers are going to have to be looking at what they can do on the rent side and potentially absorbing costs, or as Fiona mentioned for L&Q, running their service charges at a deficit to keep the combination within the benchmark. You're right that for the key worker living rent, we have published a consultation, and our hope is to do the same, because we do think it is important to have a benchmark that stands as a single figure and which is genuinely affordable to the cohort that key worker living rents are aimed at. So our hope is that we can do the same, but there is a trade-off there in terms of providers absorbing the deficit, and it may well be that the weight of consultation responses does prompt us to reconsider whether that is possible in the current context. But as I say, the consultation document does set out a clear preference. I think one thing to remember is that shared ownership is a fundamentally different proposition to key worker living rent or London Living Rent. They are both making quite a severe break between market housing costs and the actual housing costs then charged to individuals. And there is quite a sizable affordable housing grant implication that then follows from that, which is limiting the amount of affordable housing you can then deliver overall. Shared ownership takes at its starting point the actual market value of that property, and in the case of service charges, the actual cost of providing the service. So I think potentially you're starting from a different assumption about the degree to which you're seeking to protect essentially the resident from the market setting of the value.
Just on that last point though, given that shared ownership is termed an affordable housing product, do you think that that should be considered different to London Living Rent properties in that case?
It should still be taken into account. So if you look at the London plan, providers are required to take the combination of likely service charges and the cost of the affordable housing home, the rent and the mortgage, into account when deciding whether the total cost of shared ownership in that development will be affordable. It's inclusive of service charges. But I think given that the mortgage and the rent is always going to be a standalone component which is set by the market, what you then asking are for shared ownership is a cap on specifically the service charge. So you don't have the ability to sort of cross-subsidise between the two, which, as I say, is effectively what you're doing underneath the bonnet of London Living Rent. And then you run into the challenges Tom's just spoken to.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, given that, is it ground rents normally like 2.5–3%? Is it on shared ownership properties?
That's not the ground rent, that's the actual rent.
The actual rent, yeah. Just whether, yeah, that could all be encompassed again in one product. But yeah, thank you for your responses.
Assembly Member Lord Bailey.
Guests at our last meeting and a survey respondents stated that they wanted the service charges to have the service charge charter, to have more teeth. Do you agree? And what would be a realistic version of that? What would that look like? Let's start with I was going to start with Kate.
I'm happy to come in. I'm happy to come in. As I said before, I think the service charges charter is about driving best practice. It is not. It is very difficult for us, because we are not a regulator, to be able to actually enforce it. It sets out how the Mayor expects our partners to behave when it comes to service charges. There are, of course, obviously mechanisms for residents, shared owners who wish to challenge their service charges to do so, and that's absolutely right, and that's why transparency is so important. I think it's difficult to see how we could, as a non-regulator, give it teeth. In reality, we're not really set up to do that.
That's a realistic answer, which is a good one. I think on the face of it, it looks good to ask for teeth, but who's going to hold those teeth? Who's going to administer that? And it puts the GLA in a very different light, doesn't it? So it's probably better to not have those teeth. Anybody for any more? Okay, good. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you. So the last question, and I'm going to put this to Tom and Fiona, but Andrew and Charmaine, you're very welcome to comment if you have any views. So what do you think about about grant funding being contingent on compliance with the service charge charter to partners?
It's usually anything that the Mayor requires. I think it goes back to Lord Bailey's point, though. It's about enforcement. We all aspire to be able to meet the Charter, and the Shared Ownership Council are taking that one step further nationally. I think that there is a sort of flip side to it. It's for us to sell homes. I think that's another way of coming at this. You will choose to buy a home from a reputable builder. And is this, I won't use the term kite mark, but is this something that encourages buyers to buy from us because they see that protection? So I think that's another way of coming at it with the grant.
Yeah, I think that what's really important is that shared owners and those who are paying service charges have that redress. They have the transparency. They have the ability to challenge where they believe service charges to be too high, to be, paying for things that they should not be paying for, or they are being overcharged. I think that's the really, really crucial thing.
Thank you. Did you have any thoughts on that?
Probably not a very helpful one. I'm very fond of having singular solutions and simple messages. And if we've learned nothing else today, we've learned that leasehold is complex. And there are redress mechanisms that already exist. There are advisory services that already exist. For me, I'm conscious that as London has a huge number of leasehold properties and issues. But for me, to support the existing mechanisms and to make sure that people understand the existing mechanisms which already exist would be a major win.
Thank you. Absolute final point.
Absolutely. I have great sympathy for what you're saying. I think one of the real weaknesses of the British system is we introduce new laws for things that are already illegal, etc. But aren't those systems of redress far too complicated for your average resident to get involved in?
An ombudsman is designed to be consumer-facing, and the first-tier tribunal is designed to hear lay representation. But I would be the first to say that if you went up against a determined opponent in a tribunal, it is an adversarial experience that would deter many. So I am in favour of wise ombudsmen. I am very much in favour of good advice at the first instant, whether that is providing information at the point of sale or at the point of acquisition, the How to Lease Guide, which already exists, Leasehold Advisory Service, which already exists, and make as much use as you can of the existing mechanisms that already exist. The Leasehold Advisory Service, perhaps with strengthening, with support, may be able to provide more, I hesitate to use the word advocacy, but let's stray towards that, for leaseholders who have got problems, who need guidance, who need signposting through existing mechanisms. And then I think those existing mechanisms, and I think ombudsmen, etc., are improving, need to be able to scoop up an inquiry, triage it, understand what it is, deal with it immediately, or process it through to a full claim. So I think we have a lot of tools already that exist which could be made better and signposted better.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. That was our last question. So thank you all of you for your contributions today. Can we note the report in today's discussions? Can we also delegate authority to me as Chair in consultation with party group lead members to agree any output arising from the discussion? Can we note the committee's work programme? The date of the next meeting of the committee is the 26th of March 2025 at 2 p.m. in committee rooms 2 and 3 here at City Hall. I have no urgent business and I declare this meeting to be closed.